It has been one of the most complicated sports stories I think we've ever covered here on the Sports Cubicle, and one of the most complicated sports stories that I think any of us have been following. If you are a sports fan, if you are somebody who just watches the news and keeps up to date with everything that's happening in our planet, and we are here to talk about Brittney Griner coming home, being released from a Russian prison, and what comes from that, the fallout. We're here on the Sports Cubicle. I'm Mike Mercado with the one and only Paul Chivari, Devin Tingle, and Dan Marver throughout the entire show. And before we get to Paulie, before we get to this conversation, I kind of want to just break down a little bit how we got here to this point. On February 17th of this year, Brittney Griner was detained in an airport in Moscow when Russian Federal Customs Service discovered vape cartridges containing marijuana concentrate, hashish, in her luggage. She was then arrested, tried, and just some of the things that we saw throughout this process. Just a few weeks ago, on November 9th, Griner gets transferred to a Russian penal colony, and her whereabouts were unknown. Then on November 17th, there finally some confirmation from her lawyers of where she was at. Then December 1st, all the way from February 17th to December 1st, we finally hear news that the United States and Russia agreed to a one-for-one prisoner exchange. And then December 8th, Griner was released in exchange for Victor Bout. The deal did not include Paul Whelan, who, according to CNN, the Biden administration repeatedly made offers to get Whelan as part of this deal, even after Russia made clear only Griner was acceptable. Biden said his administration, quote, will never give up on his release. And just on Friday, Griner landed at Kelly Field in San Antonio, Texas. She's going to have to go through an entire process, obviously, with her coming back home. But Paulie, a story that started with a very prominent LGBTQ member who...
Prominent athlete. More iconic than I think people realized before this year.
A black woman on top of it all, and this started because of marijuana.
One of the greatest basketball players. Yeah.
This is so fascinating on so many levels, because I think, okay, let's start off with the base of, I'm glad she's home.
Mm-hmm,
like, I think on
that's
a base
what
level,
we've been calling for. Every week we've been calling for this.
How many times have you and I...
she gets to enjoy Christmas with her wife and her child. Yeah. I mean, I'm thankful that because I think in the initial, I think we thought, oh, this should just be a formality. She should be home soon. Probably a heavy fine. Don't do it again in normal times. But I put my trust in Vladimir Putin, and that was shame on me, because I didn't think he'd get that petty. And this was clearly a political tool by Russia to do this. And I think at the time we thought, okay, this might take a little bit, but she'll be home soon. And honestly, I think it took longer than it needed to, but I'm honestly shocked that she's back now, because I thought this would have taken a little bit longer ever since it was announced that she was going to work 9 years in the work colony. And I think I didn't expect her to go the full 9 years, but I thought for sure this would get carried out longer and longer, so that Russia could get whatever leverage they want in a negotiation. Clearly, Russia benefited by releasing an arms dealer, whereas we got someone on a petty crime. But of course, this is a higher profile person. So at the same time, the value of this favors the United States. And I hate to put that on two human beings like that, but a woman who didn't really do anything wrong is free. Meanwhile, a horrible arms dealer goes back to Russia. And it had to be done, and I think I think at this point, though, it should be clear as day, though, that if you're an American citizen, like, you're done doing business in your lifetime with Russia.
Yeah,
like, nothing should attract you with Russian money and Russian opportunity.
But how many Russian and Putin sympathizers have we seen since 2014, 2015 really come up from the woodwork? And I also think it's really important to talk about the elephant in the room, that how much did the Ukraine-Russia situation and the war and the conflict impact this?
Absolutely.
Because all of a sudden now you have this bargaining chip that's a human being, and you mentioned all the atrocities that this war criminal has, that for one, if we're doing a sports show, you're like, oh, this is a horrible trade, but you didn't have any leverage. You didn't have anything you can do. And I think what's also important to bring out is the U.S. soldier who's currently being held captive that everybody's talking about. Wayland, I believe. Paul Wayland is how you pronounce it. I might be saying it wrong.
Yeah,
but
I don't know the full story on him.
But even if that's whatever the full case may be, a soldier, whether it was espionage like the Russians are saying.
And I've heard all sorts of different things about it, and it's a way different ball game than Brittney Griner.
But it's important to mention that his brothers said they were happy that Brittney Griner, because an American came back home. Mm-hmm. It's important now, if you are one of these people who aren't doing this in good faith, but you like to pretend you are, saying, well, what about our U.S. soldier? Then stay on this story. Because you weren't talking about it 4 years ago.
Yep.
You were talking about it 40 minutes ago after she landed.
Convenient once Brittney Griner, and no one's ever going to be pleased. There's going to be always. Look at how many of the laugh emojis about her during this whole process turned into mad emojis.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I totally expected that when I saw that on social media. Just every time there'd be a story about Brittney Griner before the release, it'd be a laugh emoji, and it would be like, oh well, she deserves to be there. She knew what she did wrong, and it's like, so you're telling me you're totally okay with sentences that are way harsher and inconsistent with what they previously done.
Yeah,
because clearly they maximized for the smallest. So I don't want to hear of like, she should do the time. She did the time. I think she did more time than most people would do in Russia or anywhere else in the world for a vape cartridge, save for some of those weird countries where they'll basically kill you for that. But Russia purports itself to be a civilized country.
I mean, think about this. On August 4th, she was sentenced to 9 years in prison and fined 1 million Russian rubles, just over $16,000 for a vape pen.
Yeah.
Like, I think that, and we said it from the first time we made our recording back all the way in February to where we're at now.
Gosh, it's been that long?
That's the point. Over 200 days for this. And it's like, you can't tell me that it's not because of who she was, where she's from. And I do think what's scary as well, that you mentioned not doing any deals with Russia. What if she wasn't a star WNBA player? Like, yeah, she might have not been sentenced as harsh as she was, but we don't know. And I think this is a cautious tale to people from the United States right now who, I'm just going to use a term that the youth say, think stuff is too sweet right now. Yeah. That because we are in this country and we're fighting about this and fighting about that, we forget that there's an entire world out there that doesn't play by our rules. Yeah. And when you're sympathizing with Russia throughout the years of the Trumpisms, and then you're wondering, oh, wow, this is happening. Why is she even in Russia? Why is she doing this? Because all the times you cared about the WNBA, I know all you that are against it care about the W. They don't pay enough for their players to just make a living off this. So I think the most important thing we learned from this is to know all the information before you make any type of irrational opinion or statement like Micah Parsons did on Twitter.
Yeah, and this is something at the beginning that I didn't really understand, that she could make more money playing in Russia during the offseason than, and I suppose that's maybe just the European club basketball model out there, but I think that needs to be examined further, is how is it that the WNBA, which is so commercialized, just can't bring in the revenue for their athletes like another country can.
Take the WNBA out of it. What about everything that's happening with Saudi Arabia and the sports washing in this country?
Yeah, with the golf, the live golf, and then now how much money they're throwing at Ronaldo to play.
To play in UEFA.
And now they're making a bid for the not official. They're trying to make a bid for the 2030 World Cup. And we're already seeing what's happening in Qatar. Qatar officials have already been, and I'll talk about it in the World Cup segment, but how Budweiser's looking for, okay, well, you pulled out of the deal. Now you owe us, and the Qatari World Cup planners and officials are just trying to sweep it under the rug. They haven't responded to any formal letters calling for compensation or at least action on this. And it's like, that's bad business. And FIFA should have known what they were doing with doing all this. And I think just sometimes just international business when it comes to sports, and like you're saying, the sports washing and looking at all this, it's bad business. And the United States has already gotten so corrupt and greedy. I mean, just look at college. Look at the way college has gotten. So I mean, it raises giant concerns about the business model of sports and why is it that. And I'm saying, if y'all missed Brittney Griner at Baylor, oh my goodness, was she amazing.
Yeah.
Like 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. Like, I remember
a unicorn.
That's when she was on my radar, and I don't really watch women's basketball that much, but when a story like that comes around and how dominant she was at Baylor and how getting into the WNBA, and she's been a great player in the WNBA and the Olympics, so she's an iconic athlete, whether people want to believe that or not. And of course, one of the things said throughout this whole thing was, if this was LeBron James or if this was a male superstar, you would have seen a little bit of a different reaction. And I think so, but I definitely think race did have something to do with this.
Yep.
I think if this was a white woman, and I'm trying to think of maybe a white female athlete right now. Like, okay, if this happened to Megan Rapinoe, I think you would have seen the same sort of reactions because of how she would kneel for the anthem.
Again,
outspoken opinions about the United States that don't jive with people that are just in lockstep and in love with the Stars and Stripes. And that was also a weird thing throughout this to me too. She deserves to be there because she doesn't like America, so she shouldn't ask for America's help to get out. And that's a total, even though this doesn't fall under the First Amendment because this is Russian law, not American law, but it just shows that, if this did happen in America, you obviously would swing and miss on your understanding of the First Amendment. And even if you love America, if you hate Americans, you truly hate America.
It's so upsetting that people are using this as their own soapbox and using this for their own political motivation. But I think we should be used to that at this point. But I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is an American is back home from Russia, and now the public knows about another American who's being held captive and needs to be brought home. But that's not Brittney Griner's fault. If you're so patriotic, use your voice to demand and force your government to make sure another American gets home. It's not up to Brittney Griner and their family to negotiate for them to get here. You've had 4 years. Donald Trump was president when this guy was captured. So now you've gone through 2 presidential campaigns and teams. So I don't want to hear this that now you're upset about it. So, Paulie, any final thoughts? As we have a busy show today.
Yeah. I'm looking to see someone's going to land that first interview with Brittney Griner. And
I'm going to go over under CNN with the favorite odds that are going to be the favorite ones. But it's going to be an interesting story.
You're saying CNN. I'm going to say 60 Minutes or ABC 2020 or something like that. Good Morning America. I think it'll be network. It's so dumb that we're speculating.
We're nerds.
But I think everyone wants to hear what she has to say.
Yep.
I would not. I think she pretty much owned up to it that it was her vape cartridge, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if she was like, no, that was not mine.
There's always that chance.
That was planted on.
Yeah, they
pulled it out of my garbage can and they put it in. I would not be shocked. But I think she owned up to it, and I think she did her time, and I can't wait to hear what she has to say. And I hope that she is thankful that her country did step up for her.
Yeah, and I hope every American learns, and I think it's something that people who come from ethnic backgrounds or immigrants understand that when you're traveling, nobody cares that you're an American.
Yep.
You're not in America.
Yep.
Learn the rules, and you won't have to go to this situation because God bless it, thank God, Brittney Griner was brought back home. Yeah. But you ain't Brittney Griner.
No. And I mean, Brittney Griner knows too. She probably sticks out like a sore thumb. A very tall African American woman in Russia. Yeah, she's a target.
So let us know your thoughts. It's a complicated story, but she's home. So let's make sure that Paul Whelan and any other American who is serving time unjustly in a foreign country gets back home. We want to know your thoughts. We're on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. Brittney Griner back home. We got more of the Sports Cubicle coming up with the marvelous one, Dan Marver, Devin Tingle, Paul Chivari. I'm Mike Mercado.
She's free.